What if there used to be a global empire you've never heard of? An advanced civilization, hidden from history, with massive buildings, incredible technology, and a suspicious amount of domes. And what if this empire didn't just collapse, but was buried in mud? Welcome to the world of Tartaria, the internet's favourite lost empire, allegedly wiped from the map and our minds by a global conspiracy and a mysterious geological disaster. Or more likely, welcome to a story about basements, architecture, and the dangers of watching too many TikToks at 3 AM. I'm your host. This is Probably Not True. Let's start digging. Let's talk Tartaria. Yes, it was a real word, and yes, it showed up on actual maps. Tartaria, or Tartay, was a term used mostly by European mapmakers from the 13th to 19th centuries. It referred to massive swathes of Central and Northern Asia, including bits of what we now call Russia, Mongolia, and China. But here's the thing, back then, if you didn't know what something was, you just gave it a spooky name, drew a dragon in the corner, and called it cartography. Now, Tartaria was basically shorthand for big place, we don't really know who's there, possibly dangerous, please move on. So how did a vague label for somewhere east of Poland become one of the wildest historical conspiracies on the internet? Because fast forward a few hundred years, and some people believe Tartaria wasn't just a geographic placeholder. They think it was real, like really real. Not just real, but advanced. A globe-spanning, highly developed, maybe even post-scarcity civilization, with impossible architecture, free energy, and knowledge beyond our current science. And what happened to this incredible empire? It was buried in mud. All of it, globally. According to the theory, there was a worldwide cataclysm somewhere in the last 200 to 300 years. And that covered cities, buildings, and evidence of Tartarian technology in meters of soil. This mud flood didn't just bury the civilization, it buried the truth. And in its place, the powers that be, governments, historians, lizard people, take your pick, rewrote history to cover it all up. Think about that for a moment. We're not talking ancient Atlantis sunk beneath waves. We're talking about 19th century buildings in your city that secretly used to be palaces of a forgotten world power until someone covered the front door in mud and changed the Wikipedia article. Yes, people genuinely believe this. Yes, it has forums, TikToks and fan art, and yes, there's a subreddit. Several actually, I've seen a few over the last couple of days. Welcome to the rabbit hole that I've been on. So, what proof do the Tartaria truthers actually offer? There's 3 big buckets of evidence, so let's unpack them one by one. Number 1, buried buildings. You've probably seen one. A building with a door that's half below street level, a row of windows peeking out just above the pavement, a basement that suspiciously looks like it was once the main entrance. To most of us, that's just old architecture meeting modern day city planning. You know, streets get raised, new foundations get poured, urban layers stack like a geological lasagna. But to Tartaria believers? Well, it's proof. It's evidence that the cities were already built and already glorious and then partially buried by a mud flood. They point to these sunken structures all over the world. From New York brownstones to European city halls to random apartment blocks in Ohio. Why would anyone build a window below street level, they ask? Because they didn't. It wasn't below street level. Not originally. Not until the mud came. So this is the mud floating gun. Mud floating? Mud flood smoking gun. Never mind that basements exist. Never mind that construction methods vary wildly across time and region. It's easier and much more thrilling to imagine the world that we live in was quite literally built on top of another. Number 2. Impossible architecture. Do you ever walk into a train station and think it's nicer than any hotel I've ever stayed in? Welcome to Tartaria. Believers point to massive, ornate buildings from the 18th and 19th centuries, often in places that were supposedly backwaters or, frontier towns at the time. There's giant columns, there's intricate masonry, there's cast iron domes, sprawling courtyards. Why did this tiny town need a courthouse that looks like Zeus might hold court there? The theory argues that these buildings weren't built by settlers or industrialists. They were inherited, left behind. relics of a lost global empire. Now, according to the narrative, these structures are impossible in their size, scope and technical achievement, and they're far too advanced for the tools and knowledge of the area that they were built in. No cranes, no power tools, no modern logistics. It's like aliens in the pyramids all over again. Somehow, a neoclassical mega building appears in the middle of Missouri. Coincidence? Or a convenient repurposing of what was already there? Historians say planned civic investment or architectural borrowing. Tartarians say, come on, you expect me to believe a blacksmith built this without a hammer and a prayer? Now, number 3, erased maps and fuzzy history. Here's where the theory takes a sharp left into Google-proof truth. Yes, Tartaria did appear on old maps, usually just meaning here be Mongols, or we didn't bother asking who they were. But to believers, that label means that something was there, something big and then just gone all of a sudden. Now you combine that with some legit historical gaps, like colonial censorship, lost documents, dodgy translations, you've got just enough ambiguity to start making bold claims. Like, history lies to us. All the maps were changed. Time was rewritten to hide an entire empire. There's a romanticism to it, of course. The idea that the past was way more magical, more advanced and more symmetrical, and that someone or something took that away from you. This is the same impulse that fuels a lot of the Atlantis theories, the ancient aliens and Reddit threads that are titled What They Don't Want You to Know. And in an age where trusted institutions is in freefall, a mysterious empire wiped from memory feels less like fiction and more just like another Tuesday. Now, let's talk about where all good modern conspiracies are born, fed and given a new ring light. TikTok, the modern day Library of Alexandria, if the scroll function gave you brainworms. Between 2020 and 2022, Tartaria exploded on the app. It wasn't a slow build, it hit like a sudden mud flood. It began with aesthetic. Think moody lo-fi music over videos of old world architecture. Crumbling domes, ornate windows, giant stone staircases in the middle of nowhere. Buildings with vibes so strong, you half expect a Lovecraftian god to emerge from a Corinthian column. And the captions, oh the captions. What if we're the ones living in the ruins? They erased it from the textbooks. They tell us these were prisons, but look at the ceilings. If we couldn't build this now, how did they do it 200 years ago? It's part vintage steampunk, part old history cosplay, part early 2010s Tumblr mood board. And visually, it absolutely slaps. But then things get slippery. Because here's the problem. It's very easy to forget you're watching a vibe, not a verified fact. Because when the line between aesthetic and assertion gets blurry, you suddenly got a lo-fi clip of an old courthouse becoming evidence of a lost global empire. A photo of a buried archway becomes proof of a worldwide cover-up. A crumbling asylum is no longer just a depressing footnote in mental health history, it's a Tartarian power plant. The TikTok algorithm, bless its mysterious, endless heart, doesn't distinguish between curiosity and conviction. It just knows what keeps you watching. So as far more creators leaned in, mixing slow pans of impossible architecture with melancholic audio and text overlays, Tartaria went from niche theory to mainstream mystery. People weren't just enjoying these videos, they were believing them. Some even began stitching official museum tours or city council pages with smug commentary. See, they can't explain the ceilings either. This is where TikTok stops being fun and starts being a tool of fake historiography in real time. A place where vibes become truth and truth becomes optional. So what does the theory get wrong and what does it get right? So, is there a secret buried civilization underneath Paris, Chicago and Budapest? A technologically advanced utopia where free energy, impossible towers and domes for days? A society so chill that it got wiped out by a mud flood? Probably not, but let's break down the issues and the interesting bits. What the theory gets wrong: 1. Buildings have basements, and yeah, that's a kind of a thing. Most of you listening probably have a basement. Planned basements, unplanned basements, flood-prone cities, multi-level urban expansion. Topography. Cities like Chicago literally raised their entire street grid in the 19th century to deal with drainage issues. What looks like a sunken door might be the original entrance, made obsolete by urban improvement and a century of roadworks. Architecture isn't magic. just because something looks impressive doesn't mean it was conjured by steampunk Atlanteans. Victorians had a flair for the dramatic, engineers were brilliant, and no, iron didn't appear out of nowhere. Cast iron columns, detailed cornices, vast arches, they were industrial flexes, not lost alien tech. Let the 19th century be a little bit extra. And maps were vibes. Tartaria wasn't a secret empire, it was a cartographer's shrug. It was genuinely a vague label for somewhere in Asia tossed onto early European maps with the same energy as "Here be dragons." It didn't mean unified nation of genius dome builders, it meant we haven't been there yet and the guy funding this map really wanted lions. So, what does the theory kind of get right? Well, history is selective. Empires do fall, cities do sink, Atlantis is forgotten. We forget, we rewrite, we misinterpret, sometimes on purpose. As they say, history is written by the winners, or by whoever owned the printing press. The record is incomplete, lost knowledge is real, and so are cultural blind spots. Libraries like the one in Alexandria have burned, archives have been lost to war, time and mildew. Entire civilizations have left behind ruins that we don't fully understand still to this day. People hate gaps, conspiracy thrives in those gaps. When something feels off or when authority doesn't have a satisfying answer, the mind fills in the blanks. Preferably with something dramatic, like an ancient tech or a cover-up, or domes. Lots and lots of wonderful domes. So no, Tartaria probably wasn't real, but the feelings that fuel the theory, disillusionment with authority, a sense of being lied to, a hunger for wonder in a world that feels mass-produced, that's all real, baby. Mudflood or not. So why does this myth persist? Well, if Tartaria isn't real, not the empire, not the tech, not the world-shifting mud, then why does this idea refuse to die? Because it's perfect myth fuel. It makes the mundane magical. Old buildings go from nice Victorian architecture to remnants of a secret ancient power. That crumbling post office becomes a cathedral of forgotten energy. That weirdly deep window becomes a doorway into buried truths. Tartaria takes things that we pass by every day, and it tells you you're not missing something, the world is hiding it from you. It feeds the outside of fantasy, because believing in Tartaria makes you feel like you've unplugged from the Matrix. You're not just reading history, you're decoding it. You're not part of the blind masses, you're enlightened. It's comforting in a twisted way, especially in a world that feels out of control. The aesthetic is gorgeous. Lo-fi videos of grand stone buildings, soft piano music, golden lights, quotes about mystery, captions like "What if we're living in the ruins?" Tartaria fits perfectly into the nostalgia core, the analogue history, the analogue horror, and TikTok archaeologist vibes. It's spooky and it's dreamy, it's romanticised ruins. It taps into real doubt because we've covered it before, but we know history has been manipulated. We know governments lie to us, we know institutions fail, we know that whole cultures get erased. So when someone says that they erased an entire civilization, it doesn't sound as far-fetched as it probably should. Tartaria slides into that mental side door. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible. And the algorithm loves it. TikTok, YouTube and Reddit all reward engagement, not the accuracy. You can say whatever you want on the internet. It's dead anyway, as we learned in the last episode. And nothing gets people commenting like, "This can't be real." Can it? Conspiracy thrives in the grey zone between curiosity and confusion. Once the algorithm sees you're interested, it helps feeding you more domes, more basements, more secret empires, and that's why Tartaria persists. Not because it's true, but because it feels exciting, it feels rebellious, mysterious. It re-enchants the world, even though it muddies the facts. So on the Probably Not True Believability Index, we're giving Tartaria and the Great Mudflood a 3.6 out of 10 buried domes. Why not lower? Because the vibes are immaculate. The buildings are dramatic, the people making TikToks about them are wearing waistcoats and quoting Plato, and honestly that's worth something. But here's the thing, I mean, it's aesthetic, it's atmospheric, it's full of basements, but there's not much else going for the theory. There's no ancient energy grids, there's no steampunk UFOs, there's no Illuminati dome network buried under your local Gregs. It's not a cover-up. It's not a global conspiracy. It is just a misunderstanding. One that's built on historical gaps, a pinch of architectural confusion, and a big old spoonful of vintage core daydreaming. Still, you can't help but admire the sheer dedication of people who look at every old building and go, Yeah, definitely a former weather-controlling prison for the lost empire of Tartaria. Thank you for listening to Probably Not True, the podcast that digs into conspiracies, unearths weird history, and occasionally finds a buried Victorian wine cellar that someone on TikTok swears was once a teleportation hub. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit follow, leave a review, and check out our bonus episodes every Friday over on Patreon, where your support helps fund vital questions like, how many domes is too many domes? Until next time, think critically, scroll responsibly, and maybe don't trust anyone who says your local town hall was once a wireless energy plant for Skytrams. Next time on Probably Not True, we're taking a candlelit walk through foggy Victorian London, a city full of cobblestones, gaslights, and unresolved murder mysteries, because one of the most infamous serial killers in history might not have been who we think. Was Jack the Ripper a deranged surgeon with a grudge, a royal family scandal covered up by the police, a Freemason hitman silencing secrets with a scalpel, or was the whole thing a moral panic fueled by tabloids, fog, and the eerie allure of a faceless villain? We'll explore the suspects, the symbols, the secret societies, and maybe, just maybe, uncover why Jack the Ripper refuses to die in the public imagination. Episode 10 is a big one, Jack the Ripper, dropping next Monday. Stay curious, stay suspicious, and keep your top hat on.